The void approaches and the power that lays within you is beginning to stir. Soon it will burst forth, but you have to level up and move through the story to reach your full potential. It's time to take an epic adventure in the world of Revelin in Divinity Original Sin the board game, which was designed by Noah Cohen, Kieran Kelly, Kat Kruger, and Brian Neff, and is published by Larian Studios, who helped sponsor this video. Hi everybody, my name is Nick Murphy of the Brothers Murph, and we are here with Board Game Geek. Well, I think it's time for an adventure, so let's get this game down to the table to learn how to play Divinity Original Sin the board game. Divinity Original Sin is a campaign game where you will move through the Divine Atlas from location to location, and as you make choices in the game, you will veer off onto branching paths which will massively change the story and take you down a completely different story than if you took the other path. This game comes with a tutorial scenario which will help teach you the game. This how to play is going to go through the tutorial and teach you what you need to know so you can knock it out quick when you play your game and then jump right into the campaign. So it goes without saying, spoilers for the tutorial. Cool? Alright, let's go.
When you first open your box, all of the tutorial material will be on top. You will only be using this for the tutorial, ignore everything else below this for now. The cards for the tutorial are clearly labeled. To begin, let's first set up our characters, which are called origins. The tutorial comes with 4 pre-built origins that you can choose from. On this page of the Divine Atlas, it shows what each character gets. Let's set up Sabile. Give her a character board. Place her origin card here along with her mini. Give her the assassin dagger and place it in the one-hand spot here, and then give her the thick robes and place them on her armor spot here. In the top right of these cards, it will show you what kind of equipment it is, and then you just match it with the board. Give Sabile the 2 level 1 scoundrel cards and the 2 level 1 polymorph cards. The card's class will be shown here. Place the pawn talent tile here. On her origin card, it will show you her health, which you will set a health dial to, and how many source tokens she gets, in this case 1. Finally, give her an action point tracker and put it on 0, and she is fully set up. Repeat this process for other origins up to the number of players you have. Now let's set up our tutorial scenario. Open your Divine Atlas to the Torture Chamber scenario. Place the combat board to the right of the Atlas, and it's important to make sure that the symbols here line up. Find the Torture Chamber location deck and place it next to the Atlas. Assemble the 6 minion trays and place them nearby with their matching letter standees. Take the status effect cards and separate them by type and place them nearby. Make a supply of the dice, gold tokens, and environmental effect tokens. That's the general setup of a scenario, but each scenario will also have specific setup shown here after the story text. For the Torture Chamber, you will set the time tracker to 7, place the hourglass token to the 7 spot on the combat board. Then you will place all origin minis on location 1, the Torture Chamber, and then you will immediately resolve location card 1. And that concludes the setup. Now let's get to resolving. Okay, so in this location, it is forcing us to immediately resolve card 1, which, spoilers, is gonna be a fight. But before we get into that, let's quickly talk about how you would normally go about a round and resolving these location cards. Each scenario is at a specific location, and in that location there are local places that you can go explore. Exploring these spaces can house a whole lot of stuff, from fights to treasure to escape routes, choices that will change the game, and more. Every round of the game, you will see if you're doing an explore round or a combat round, and it is very easy to determine this. If there are no enemies anywhere on the board, you are doing an explore round. If there is even one enemy anywhere, you are in a combat round. Simple. Note that after every round, explore or combat, time will tick down. This may cause events to happen and you may run out of time completely. If you're in an explore round, you can choose to explore or do a rest round. We'll talk more about these in detail a bit later, but normally you will be exploring. At the start of an explore round, all origins may move to any location and then choose to explore and resolve that space. When you resolve a space, you will find the matching card in the location deck. All locations that are being explored will be read aloud, and then they will all flip over and be resolved in the order of the player's choosing. So that's the basics of an explore round. In this scenario, the game is essentially forcing us to explore location 1, and uh-oh, it's a fight. If a fight is happening, the card will tell you what enemies to spawn. In this case, we will be spawning Darkhand's Lackey, and you will spawn an amount based on your player count. It will also tell you what location they spawn at, in this case location 3. It also states that these lackeys are fast enemies. Enemies are either fast or slow, and this determines the turn order for the combat. You will take a minion tray and place the enemy card in the tray and set their health to what it says on the card here, in this case 28. Then you will place the tray in either the fast or the slow row depending on what it says on the location card. Place a matching lettered standee in location 3 to represent the lackey. Now we're ready to fight. As stated, the order in which to activate depends on where the minions are. It will go fast minions first, then all origins, then slow minions. Since our lackeys here are fast, they are going to go first. Whenever an enemy activates, you will need to figure out who they're targeting. You do this by rolling this die. If the boot comes up, they will target the closest origin, and if there's a tie, the players choose who they target. If this target symbol is rolled, then you will look at their card here to determine who they target. In this case, the lackey will target the origin with the lowest physical armor. Armor can block either physical or elemental damage, so you will then look at the origins to see who has the lowest physical armor, and that will be the lackey's target. On page 46 of the rulebook, all of the targeting preferences are listed. Then if the enemy needs to move, they will move up to their move value to get within range. This lackey's range is 0, so he needs to be in the same location as us, and his move is 3, so he will move along this line by 1 to get to us. Now that he is in range, he will attack his target. Note that if a minion cannot reach their target, they will move as far as they can and then heal themselves by their level shown here. There are two kinds of attacks minions and origins can do, either single attacks or area attacks. A single attack will be against one single target, and an area attack will attack everyone at the location except for your own origin. Note that this includes your allies, so if you do an area attack, make sure none of your teammates are at the location or they're going to get hit as well. So the lackey is going to hit one of us. Let's have him hit Sibyl here. You will then look here on his card to see what he rolls and what kind of damage he does. This shows that he's doing physical damage, which can be reduced by physical armor. There is also elemental damage like water or air damage, which is reduced by elemental armor. The lackey is doing physical damage, and we will be rolling 5 white dice. The +1 shows how many extra hits they always do. So if they miss on all 5 dice, they will always hit for at least 1 as they have a +1. If they rolled 4 hits, they will then add +1 to that for a total of 5. Most minions also have some kind of special ability that is shown here. This ability shows that for each special icon the minion rolls, they will do +2 damage. Note that there are 3 kinds of dice in the game. White dice are the worst, red dice have the most hits on them, and blue dice have the most special icons on them. So the lackey rolls their dice and hits 2 times +1 for a total of 3, but he also rolled 1 special icon which adds 2 damage for a final total of 5 damage. Sibyl has thick robes which have 2 physical armor, so she only takes 3 damage. Lower her health on her health dial. Now the lackey is done and it's time for us to fight back. When the origins take their turn, you get to choose in the order of which they activate. Let's have Losa go first. At the beginning of an origin's turn, put their action point marker on the amount shown on their origin card, in this case 4. The actions you take during your turn will take these action points, and you may take as many actions as you can afford. And also note that if you don't use your action points, you can roll them over to the next round. On your player board is listed the various actions that you can take. You may move locations for 1 action point each, and you may leave spaces where enemies are. You can taunt and make enemies move to you. You may equip or store 1 item into your backpack. You may trade and give or take 1 item from another origin in your location. If you have no enemies in your space, you may recover and heal 2 or move 1 status to the left in your cooldown track. We'll talk about your cooldown track in a moment. You may revive and transfer health to a downed origin in your location. And finally, you may use your cards. Your origin will revolve around your cards. You have cards that are in your equipment spaces like your bow, or skill cards that are in your hand. In the top left, it shows how many action points it takes to use that card. Your cards work just like the enemy cards. You will have the range of the attack, what kind of attack, what you will roll, the kind of damage it does, and its special ability. Note that when you see this star, it is referring to your origin's level. Right now, we're at level 1, so this star adds 1. Cards like the bow that have nothing next to the action point cost can be used as many times as you can afford them. But many other cards have a number and then an hourglass. The hourglass means that this card will have to go into your cooldown track, and you will not be able to use it again until it moves off your cooldown track. At the end of an origin's turn, all of their cards in their cooldown track will move 1 space to the left. For example, this Blinding Radiance will have to go to cooldown spot 3 and won't come off for a couple turns. The majority of the time, when a card goes to your cooldown track, it will go there face down. But if it says ongoing and has this symbol, it goes face up, and its ability is active until it's flipped down. And you will flip it down when it reaches this spot in your cooldown track. So if we played this Chameleon card, it would go face up into cooldown spot 4, and while it's face up, when blinded minions attack you, you may re-roll 2 dice instead of 1. Once Chameleon gets to spot 1, it turns face down and this ability isn't available anymore. Once an origin has taken all the actions they would like to, they will move everything in their cooldown track 1 space to the left, and cards that come off your cooldown track get returned to you. Then you move on to the next origin. Once all origins have activated, you will activate any slow minions. In our case, we don't have any, and then we'll start a new round. Keep in mind that at the end of every round, explore, fight, or rest, you move the time marker down, so while you're fighting, time is ticking. So that is the basics of fighting. Before we get into what happens when you win or lose a fight, let's go over some things that can happen often in a fight. You may remember me talking about blinded minions. Blinded is a status effect, and status effects can be placed on both minions and on origins. And status effects can also be good or bad. Let's go back to Sabile's Chameleon card. This card doesn't have you roll dice, but instead gains you invisible. Ignore this gray banner here, we'll talk about this in a bit. When you gain a status, it will go into your cooldown track just like your other cards. In this case, we would gain invisible status and put it in cooldown spot 2, whereas our Chameleon goes to cooldown spot 4. Many cards will boost or hinder you based on your statuses. For example, if we gave ourselves invisible with our Chameleon card and then we played our Throwing Knife card, because we're invisible, we get to roll 2 blue dice instead of white dice. Finding out how to work all your cards together is a big part of the game. Now you can also put negative statuses on your enemies and they can put them onto you. If they are put onto you, they work the same way. They will go into your cooldown track and mess with you until they're gone. If you put them on an enemy, you will take the status effect and flip it to its red side and then put it in their cooldown track. Now this will mess with them on their turns, and their cooldown track works the same way yours does, with the cards in it sliding down at the end of their turns. In relation to status effects, the locations could also have effects called environmental effects. Certain cards like Rain here make the location wet. You will then find the matching environmental token and place it here next to the location. This location is now wet. A location can be wet, charged, warm, oily, or difficult. When anyone in a wet location takes water damage, they take 2 more damage. If it's charged, they will take 2 more damage from air damage. Oily takes 2 more damage from earth damage, warm takes 2 more damage from fire damage, and difficult terrain takes 1 more movement point to move there. And the environmental effects can matter for cards, like Hailstrike here that freezes enemies that are in a wet location. Okay, so that's effects. Let's talk about some last couple of things. If you see this symbol here on a card, you will deal damage that ignores their armor. Origins will have talents that are here. These may be ongoing or they may be used once per location. Keep in mind that once per location means the big location, not small individual locations. So this talent won't come back until you move somewhere completely new. Each origin also has a special ability that may be used when it says. You may have noticed that many cards have this gray banner with words in it, like here we have Mystic and Rogue. These are keywords that you have. If you remember on the Chameleon card, there was this keyword with a cooldown symbol on it. Many cards have this. How this works is if you ever need this keyword, you can turn in this card to give you that keyword at that moment. So if we really needed invisibility, we could use Chameleon to gain it and then it would go face down onto your cooldown track spot 3. Keep in mind that you do not get to use the rest of the card when you do this. You are only gaining the keyword, and you don't get to keep that keyword. It's just use that once and then it's face down in your cooldown track. Your keywords will matter for doing tests later in the game. The last thing we'll talk about is your source token. You have a source collar on and you may turn in your source token to activate this card. Okay, so let's finally talk about what happens when you win or lose a combat. When combat ends in either a win or a loss, you will reference the card. A win is when you defeat all of the enemies, and a loss is when all origins are knocked down to 0 health. Win or lose, you will always come back to 1 health after the combat. You will then follow the text for whether you won or lost. We're awesome, so let's just assume that we won. We would then go to lower hold 2 and gain a healing potion. Things like potions and scrolls are consumable as shown by this X here, and these will go into your backpack, but they can be used at any time. When you gain a consumable, any origin can take it. So now we're going to move locations. We are moving the big location as now we're done with the torture chamber, so we will turn the page and hey, we're at the lower hold. When you change locations, you will flip the combat board over and follow the interlude procedure there. You would generally level up, though we're not doing this at the moment. You will go back to full health and clear your cooldown track. You gain your source token back and flip your talents face up. You may now trade stuff with other origins and finally visit the merchant. We have no gold, so we're going to go ahead and skip the merchant. You will then align the combat board with the atlas again, taking care to align it up properly. As you can see, we now have event D here at time slot 3. We then follow the setup procedure after reading the story text. We take the lower hold location deck, set the timer to our player count, and then place our minis on location 1. Now the first location, the torture chamber, was there to run us through combat. The lower hold location is here to teach us about exploring. If there are no enemies anywhere, we will take an explore or a rest round. Note that all players must choose the same option, either explore or rest. If you rest, you will heal for 2 and then remove all statuses, good and bad, from your cooldown track. You can then equip and trade and revive any origin anywhere on the map. You may use a skill or item ignoring its action point cost. And then, as always, you will slide down your cooldown track. If you decide to take an explore round, each origin may move to any location. Then they may explore that location or resolve a card that's in the holding area. There are certain locations that may be resolved at a later time, like say, an exit. You can either choose to go up this exit and end the tutorial, or put it in your holding area and come back to resolve it at a later time. A reminder that when exploring, all players that are exploring will read out their cards and then flip them over, and then the party decides in what order to resolve them. Let's say we stay together and explore where we're standing, the storage room. We then go and find the location number in the location deck, in this case card 1. And we have a challenge. This is one area where your keywords will matter. We have a crate that we can smash open. In this challenge, we will always roll 3 dice, but if the origins doing the challenge have the keywords warfare or two-handed, they would get to roll more dice. We don't have those keywords, so we'll just roll the 3. We roll 3 hits and then we flip over the card to see how we did. Hey, we rolled enough to get some loot and we also got a key. You may have noticed that this path was red. Red paths like this one require a key to unlock them. If they are not unlocked, neither origins or enemies can move along this path. But we just got a key, so now we can go down to the trapped door. Since we're together, that is the end of our explore round, so we move the timer down 1 spot. The skull on that trapped door scares me a little bit, so let's head over to the interrogation. Well, Losa does. Sabine decides she's going to head over to the ambush. Since both origins are exploring, we will reveal both cards and read them out. Uh-oh, the ambush was, well, an ambush, and it looks like Sabine is going to be going into a fight. We'll put out all that stuff in a moment. Now where Losa is, we just have to flip the card over to see what's happening. It looks like a prisoner is getting beaten up by a magister, and we have to decide what to do. Do we help or not? Depending on what you choose, you will then read out another card. I'm going to let you discover these choices on your own, but remember that choices that you make can massively change the storyline, so choose carefully. That round is now over, but now that Sabine has walked into an ambush, the next round will be a combat round because now there are enemies on the board. We've already talked about combat, so we're not going to go through it again, but we'll just assume that we crushed it because we're awesome. But let's say fighting took us a while and we got to event D. When the timer gets here, we will then find card D from the location deck and resolve it. And a Kraken attacked. Guess we shouldn't have taken so long. But we're not defeated yet. That happens when we get to event E and fully run out of time. So at this point, we've seen all the different types of things that we can come across in our explorations in the tutorial. So let's head back onto the stairs leading up location, which is our exit, and head on out. Let's turn the page and look at that. It looks like our adventure awaits. At this point, you are ready to fully start playing. You can either continue to use your pre-made origins that you used in the tutorial, or you can make your own following this guide. The next page has information about all of the origins that are available to play. Once you decide, you will resolve an interlude phase and then go into the next location. At this point, we're going to quickly go over how boss fights work, as you knew there had to be a boss or two lurking in the game. Note that there will be spoilers as I will be showing off the first boss, so if you want to skip this part, feel free to, and you can learn the boss rules from the rulebook when you come across one. When you find a boss, you will open up the boss book to the page that has your boss. In this case, we open to the Magister Captain Evandris. You will take the boss dashboard and put it above the book and place an action point marker on their track here. Find the boss's tactic cards, put aside their title card, and shuffle their cards to form a face-down deck which will go here. Take the boss HP tray and place their title card in here. Set their health to the amount shown next to your player count, in this case 55. Place this tray in either the fast or slow position as shown in their booklet. Find their standee and place it on the map in the space listed in the booklet. Finally, some bosses have special setup rules shown here. In this case, we place a boss token on the uncontested spot on this track here. When it's the Origin's turn to activate, their turns are pretty normal, though each boss will have immunities that you need to keep in mind. The bosses, however, act differently than normal enemies, namely they use their tactic cards and have action points like yours. How many action points and armor they have each round is shown here. Now in this case there are a bunch of stars, as Evandris' special ability is that the more that you attack him, the more actions and armor he gets. So in this case, wherever the boss token is at the beginning of their turn is how many action points and armor he has. You will set their action point to the number shown, and then you will look at the top card of their deck. We can see that there is a 4 here. That means to use this card, Evandris has to spend 4 action points, which he has, so you will lower this by 4 and then flip over and resolve the card. Once the card is resolved, you will look at the next card to see if he can activate that one. This one costs 2, so he will flip over that card and activate it. Now the next card costs 4, but he only has 2 action points left, so he cannot activate this card and his turn is done. Though note that bosses keep their remaining action points and will add to them next round. When resolving his card, you will carry out the attack in much the same way as normal enemies. Though the boss will never roll the target die, they will always use their special target on their card, in the case of Battle Stomp, the closest enemy. They will move if the card has a move value, and then you will roll the dice shown and activate the card's ability. Once the card is resolved, it will go face down to their cooldown track in the space shown at the top of the card, though they, like you, may have cards that stay face up and have ongoing effects. At the end of the boss's turn, all their cards in their cooldown track will slide down. Any cards that come off will go to the bottom of their tactics deck. And that is how a boss fight works. All of the bosses will have different flavors and special abilities like Evandris's track at the bottom of his board, so make sure to read these carefully when starting a fight. And with that, your adventure begins. And that is how to play the tutorial for Divinity Original Sin.
So that is a look at how to play the tutorial for Divinity Original Sin, the board game. We didn't go through every last thing in the game like leveling up your character, but you can discover those things as you move through the campaign. This should get you started. And if Divinity Original Sin seems like a game you'd enjoy, make sure to check it out to learn more. And until next time, I've been Nick Murphy, and that is how to play the tutorial for Divinity Original Sin, the board game. Have a great day.